Hi, so we're back to read Chapter 3 in Module 2 of All Quiet on the Western Front. We'll probably stop halfway through so that you guys can connect your thoughts or stop and think. Again, don't forget to keep up with your conflict log, your vocabulary log, and start thinking about the point of view. You'll have to, in challenge number 2, you'll have to create a journal entry for 2 different characters who have a different point of view than Paul Baumer, the main character, the narrator. Okay, so Chapter 3 of All Quiet on the Western Front. Reinforcements have arrived. The vacancies have been filled and the sacks of straw in the huts are already booked. Some of them are old hands, but there are 25 men of a later draft from the base. They're about 2 years younger than us. Crop nudges me. Seen the infants? Infants, how ironic is that, given the fact that they're only 19 or 20 years old? Kaczynski joins us. We stroll past the horse boxes and go over to the reinforcements, who are already issued with gas masks and coffee. Long time since you had anything decent to eat, huh? Cat asks one of the youngsters. He grimaces. For breakfast, turnip bread. Lunch, turnip stew. Supper, turnip cutlets and turnip salad. Cat gives a knowing whistle. Bread made of turnips? You've been in luck. It's nothing new for it to be made of sawdust. But what do you say to the haricot beans? Have some. The youngster turns red. You can't kid me. Kaczynski merely says, Fetch your mess tin. We follow curiously. He takes us to a tub behind his straw sack. Sure enough, it's half full of beef and beans. Kaczynski plants himself in front of it like a general and says, Sharp eyes and light fingers. That's what the Prussians say. At the time, the Prussians were German. We're surprised. Great guts, Cat. How did you come by that? I ask him. Ginger, the cook, was glad I took it. I gave him 3 pieces of parachute silk for it. Cold beans taste fine, too. Patronizingly, he gives the youngster a portion and says, Next time you come with your mess tin, have a cigar or a chew of tobacco in your other hand. Get me? And he turns to us. You get off scot-free, of course. We couldn't do without Kaczynski. He has a 6th sense. That means he has more than the 5 senses. He's kind of got a telepathic thing going on. There are such people everywhere, but one does not appreciate it at first. Every company has 1 or 2. Kaczynski is the smartest I know. By trade, he is a cobbler. That means somebody who fixes shoes, I believe. But that hasn't anything to do with it. He understands all trades. It's a good thing to be friends with him, as Kropp and I are, and High Westhouse too, more or less. But High is rather the executive arm, operating under Cat's orders when things come to blows. For that, he has his qualifications. That means he's a tough guy. For example, we land at night in some entirely unknown spot, a sorry hole that has been eaten out to the very walls. We are quartered in a small dark factory adapted to the purpose. There are beds in it, or rather bunks, a couple of wooden beams over which wire netting is stretched. Wire netting is hard, and there's nothing to put on it. Our waterproof sheets are too thin. We use our blankets to cover ourselves. So they have these beds made out of wire. So they're very uncomfortable. Cat looks at the place and then says to High Westhouse, Come with me. They go off to explore. Half an hour later, they are back again with arms full of straw. Cat has found a horse box with straw in it. Now we might sleep if we weren't so terribly hungry. Kropp asks an artilleryman who has been some time in this neighborhood, Is there a canteen anywhere abouts? Is there a what? He laughs. There's nothing to be had here. You won't find so much as a crust of bread here. Aren't there any inhabitants here at all, then? He spits. Yes, a few. But they hang round the cookhouse and beg. That's a bad business. Then we'll have to pull in our belts and wait till the rations come up in the morning. But I see Cat has put on his cap. Where to, Cat? I ask. Just to explore the place a bit. He strolls off. The artilleryman grins scornfully. Go ahead and explore, but don't strain yourself in carrying what you find. Which is a joke. He's saying you're not going to find anything, so it's not going to be that happy or that heavy. Disappointed, we lie down and consider whether we couldn't have a go at it at the iron rations, but it's too risky. So we try to get a wink of sleep. Crop divides a cigarette and hands me half. Jaden gives an account of his national dish, broad beans and bacon. He despises it when not flavored with bog myrtle. And, for God's sake, let it all be cooked together, not the potatoes, the beans, and the bacon separately. Someone growls that he will pound Jaden into bog myrtle if he doesn't shut up, because all he's talking about is food and they're hungry. When all becomes quiet in the big room, only the candles flickering from the necks of a couple of bottles, and the artilleryman spitting every now and then. We are just dozing off when the door opens and Cat appears. I think I must be dreaming. He has 2 loaves of bread under his arm and a blood-stained sandbag full of horse flesh in his hand. They're going to cook horse meat and eat it. The artilleryman's pipe drops from his mouth. He feels the bread. Real bread? By God, and still hot too? Cat gives no explanation. He has the bread. The rest doesn't matter. I'm sure that if he were planted down in the middle of the desert, in half an hour he would have gathered together a supper of roast meat, dates, and wine. Cut some wood, he says curtly to High. Then he hauls out a frying pan from under his coat and a handful of salt as well as a lump of fat from his pocket. He has thought of everything. High makes a fire on the floor. It lights up the empty room of the factory. We climb out of bed. The artilleryman hesitates. He wonders whether to praise Cat and so perhaps gain a little for himself, but Kaczynski doesn't even see him. He might as well be thin air. He goes off cursing. Cat knows the way to roast horse flesh so that it's tender. It shouldn't be put straight into the pan. That makes it tough. It should be boiled first in a little water. With our knives, we squat round in a circle and fill our bellies. That is Cat. If for 1 hour in a year something eatable were to be had in some one place only, within that hour, as if moved by a vision, he would put on his cap, go out, and walk directly there, as though following a compass, and find it. He finds everything. If it's cold, a small stove and wood, hay and straw, a table and chairs, but above all, food. It is uncanny. One would think he conjured it, like magic, out of thin air. His masterpiece was 4 boxes of lobsters. Admittedly, we would rather have had a good beefsteak. We have settled ourselves on the sunny side of the hut. There is a smell of tar, of summer, and of sweaty feet. Cat sits beside me. He likes to talk. Today we've done an hour's saluting drill because Jaden failed to salute a major smartly enough. Cat can't get it out of his head. You take it from me. We're losing the war because we can salute too well, he says. Crop stalks up with his breeches rolled up and his feet bare. He lays out his wash socks to dry on the grass. Cat turns and eyes up to heaven. Lets off a mighty fart and says meditatively, every little bean must be heard as well as seen. This is an example of trench humor, so that soldiers have to find some kind of funniness. You know, it's bathroom humor like we see on South Park or any of those other shows, just to relieve the stress and the tension of the war. The two begin to argue. At the same time, they lay a bottle of beer on the result of an air fight that's going on above us. So they're betting on an air fight. There are planes up above that are fighting each other in World War I. Kaczynski won't budge from the opinion, which is an old front hog, he rhymes. Give 'em all the same grub and all the same pay, and the war would be over and done in a day. Crop, on the other hand, is a thinker. He proposes that a declaration of war should be a kind of popular festival with entrance tickets and bands like a bullfight. Then, in the arena, the ministers and generals of the two countries, dressed in bathing drawers and armed with clubs, can have it out amongst themselves. Whoever survives, his country wins. That would be much simpler and more just than his arrangement, where the wrong people do the fighting. So do you think Crop's idea is a good one? that they all get together and they take all of the generals and the leaders and you put them in an arena, let them fight until they die, and whoever wins that fight is the winner of the war. This way, all of the other people don't have to die for it, for all of their ideas, for the leaders' ideas. The subject is dropped. Then the conversation turns to drill. A picture comes before me, burning midday in the barrack yard. The heat hangs over the square. The barracks are deserted. Everything sleeps. All one hears is the drummers practicing. They have installed themselves somewhere and practice brokenly, dully, monotonously. What a concord. Midday heat, barracks square, and drummers beating. The windows of the barracks are empty and dark. From some of them, trousers are hanging to dry. The rooms are cool, and one looks toward them longingly. Oh, dark, musty platoon huts with the iron bedstands, the checkered bedding, the lockers and the stools. Even you can become the object of desire. Out here, you have a faint resemblance to home. Your rooms full of the smell of stale food, sleep, smoke, and clothes. Kaczynski paints it all in lively colors. What would we not give to be able to return to it? That means home. Farther back than that, our thoughts dare not go. I'm sorry. Their thoughts are going back to just the barracks because now they're in even worse conditions. So they don't even think about home. They just think about going back to the barracks. The barracks have become home. We indulge in reminiscences. Crop laughs suddenly and says, "Change at Lone." That was our corporal's favorite game. Lone is a railway junction. In order that our fellows going on shouldn't get lost there, Himmelstas used to practice the change in the barrack room. We had to learn that at Lone. To reach the branch line, we must pass through a subway. The beds represented the subway, and each man stood at attention on the left side of his bed. Then came the command, "Change at Lone!" And like lightning, everyone scrambled under the bed to the opposite side. We practiced this for hours on end. Meanwhile, the German airplane has been shot down. Like a comet, it bursts into a streamer of smoke and falls headlong. Kropp has lost the bottle of beer. Disgruntled, he counts out the money from his wallet. Surely Himmelstas was a very different fellow as a postman, say I, after Albert's disappointment has subsided. Then how does it come that he's such a bully as a drill sergeant? The question revives Kropp, more particularly as he hears there's no more beer in the canteen. It's not only Himmelstas. There are lots of them. As sure as they get a stripe or a star, they become different men. Just as though they'd swallowed concrete. That's the uniform, I suggest. Roughly speaking, it is, says Cat, and prepares for a long speech. But the root of the matter lies somewhere. For instance, if you train a dog to eat potatoes and then afterwards put a piece of meat in front of him, he'll snap at it. It's his nature. And if you give a man a little bit of authority, he behaves just the same way. He snaps at it too. The things are precisely the same. In himself, man is essentially a beast, only he butters it over like a slice of bread with a little decorum. The army is based on that. One man must always have power over the other. The mischief is merely that each one has too much power. A non-com, that means a non-commissioned officer, can torment a private, a lieutenant a non-com, a captain a lieutenant until he goes mad. And because they know they can, they all soon acquire the habit more or less. Take a simple case. We're marching back from the parade ground dog-tired. Then comes the order to sing. We sing spiritlessly, for it's all we can do to trudge along with our rifles. At once the company is turned about and has to do another hour's drill as punishment, because they didn't sing well enough. On the march back, the order to sing is given again, and once more we start. Now, what's the use of all that? It's simply that the company's commander has been turned by having so much power. Power is a very important central idea in this book. It's one of them, not all of them. And nobody blames him. On the contrary, he is praised for being strict. That, of course, is only a trifling instance, but it holds us in very different affairs. Now, I ask you, let a man be whatever you like in peacetime. What occupation is there in which he can behave like that without getting a crack on the nose? He can only do that in the army. It goes to the heads of them all, you see. More insignificant a man has been in civil life, the worse it takes him. They say, of course, there must be discipline, ventures Crop meditatively. True, growls Frank. They always do, Cat. And it may... Sorry, let me start again. True, growls Cat. They always do. And it may be so. Still, it oughtn't to become an abuse. But you try to explain that to a blacksmith or a laborer or a workman. You try to make that clear to a peasant. And that's what most of them are here. All he sees is that he has been put through the mill and sent to the front. But he knows well enough that he must do what he must do and what not. It's simply amazing, I tell you, that the ordinary Tommy sticks it all up here in the front line. Simply amazing. No one protests. Everyone knows that the drill ceases only in the front line and begins again a few miles behind. With all the absurdities of saluting and parade, it's an iron law that the soldier must be employed under every circumstance. That means the powers that be in the army make sure that a soldier is constantly doing something so he never has time to think. So on the front line, they're not parading and saluting and doing all of those things. On the front line, they have to fight and do their battle. But as soon as they leave the front line is when they go back to doing drills. And this is what they resent. As well they should. Here Jaden comes up with a flushed face. He is so excited that he stutters. Beaming with satisfaction, he stammers out, Himmelstoss is on his way. He's coming to the front. Okay, so that's the end of the first section of Chapter 3. Don't forget to go to your conflict log and your vocabulary log and start beginning to think about the point of view. We've had new characters introduced. We know a little bit more about Cat. We know more about Jaden. We know about Crop. And so be mindful of these things when you're ready to write your point of view journal entries. See you soon.